No new wars. No new wars. Well, that did not age so well, did it? Pour a drink because we are bringing you into our group chat about politics and the next generation of leaders in our country. This is Political Playlist Happy Hour.
The political revolution of the millennium.
Welcome to Political Playlist.
All right, are we ready, guys?
Happy Hour.
Happy Hour.
We fucked that up so bad.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Political Playlist Happy Hour. I'm Anna Muskie-Goldwyn.
I'm Anthony Barquette.
And Michael is opening some offshore bank accounts maybe on the Cayman Islands or something like that.
I didn't ask him to do this.
I'm honestly shocked that this isn't some scheme the two of you are running.
For sure.
But it is just the two of us today. And we are indeed bringing you into our group chat because we literally were texting about this morning. We are going to talk about a little update, what's happening in Iran, but then kind of tie that to what seems to be maybe Trump's next foreign intervention target, which is the unfortunately struggling country of Cuba. So I'm going to dive in with Iran because this news is, I would say, unsurprising, but crazy.
I was actually just thinking before you dive in how funny it would be if the next chapter of Political Playlist was Cayman Islands.
That we just move there?
No, just Michael's over there figuring out who the politicians are over there.
Oh, he's just setting us up in the Cayman Islands.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. I could maybe get into that. I don't know. The Caribbean, I'm más o menos on.
Yeah.
It's nice, but I'm also I feel like it can be a little I don't like just sitting on a beach. I want to do stuff.
All right. Well, let's talk about Iran.
On that note.
Who cares about beaches?
Okay. So peace talks with Iran have collapsed after
No way. No.
Shocking.
They have? Are you No. What happened to that MOU from 7 days ago?
I know. The MOU fell apart. And so just after July 4th, fighting resumed. And Trump said that he considered the truce over, which is the strong language he likes to use. And so now we are on multiple days of strikes on Iran. There are new rounds of attacks that started today, which we're recording on Monday. This comes out on Tuesday, that have hit a bunch of different sites, according to Iran state media. And then Iran, in retaliation, has attacked U.S. partner forces in Jordan, Kuwait, and Bahrain with missiles and drones. And what is most notable about this is that we have, unfortunately, new U.S. service member deaths. So before this re-escalation, there were several people who had been killed in the earlier days of the Iran war. Now, after this past weekend and the past few days, there are 17, but really 18 military personnel who have been killed in conflict. There were 3 people killed in the most recent attacks, 2 of them by an Iranian missile and drone in Jordan, and 1 in northern Iraq during a controlled detonation of an unexploded device, bomb, whatever, from a downed Iranian drone. And then there was an additional service member who was reported missing after that Jordan attack, and then unidentified remains were found later near the site. So we can assume that that was the service member who had not been identified. So that brings the total to 18. And I saw something very interesting this morning that I wanted to bring up, which is that, for contrast, 13 service members died in Biden's admittedly not great withdrawal from Afghanistan, which ended the war in Afghanistan, even if it was on a rocky footing. And I think that we have, rightfully so in many cases, seen a lot of people on the right, many people on the left or in the middle, who have criticized what Biden did in that event, and namely because 13 service members ended up dead. And so my question is, what are these military members dying for? Because those 13 military members I don't think should have died. I think it was botched in many ways. But at least that war ended. We got out. It didn't maybe have the best repercussions in Afghanistan with the Taliban. But now we've got 18 people dead, and I couldn't tell you what we've gotten out of these last few months. Can you?
No, and sorry, just a clarification there, Anna. So did 3 people die, or was it just
So
2?
3 people, well, really
I
4.
thought-
So
Oh, okay.
2 people died in Jordan,
Yeah.
1 confirmed death in Iraq, but then there was another service member missing in Jordan,
Okay,
and they
that's-
then found remains that have not been identified yet, but one can assume that that is the 4th service member that has died in the last couple days.
Yeah, no, it's actually I like, this is comical. I was at a dinner the other night, and people were taught. I was like, "Oh, so you were for no wars," and now we're in Iran, and they're like, "Oh, well, do you want to die, Anthony?" And I was like, what do you mean?" I was like, I never even thought twice about Iran being able to kill America. Whoever thought about that until
Well, it's also like I would
a
understand.
lot of countries want us dead now.
A lot of
by the
countries want us
way.
dead, but also when it comes to the discussion of nuclear weapons, it doesn't seem that there has been any there. I'm sorry, I'm not even going to say it doesn't seem. There has not been any progress to making that more difficult for Iran, because what has become very clear is that we can bomb the hell out of Iran, and because they are a government that is authoritarian, that does not inherently care about the will of their people, they're going to just let people die, and they're not going to give up the the 2 bargaining chips they have, one of which is the Strait of Hormuz, and the second which is the uranium that they're enriching. And just I mean, the 18 service members dying is horrible. Iran itself says there have been at least 3,000 Iranians, many of them civilians, who have been killed since the beginning of the war. That's coming from Iran itself. So, however we want to trust that number or not. But I think we can all understand that there have been a lot of civilian deaths in Iran, and that number is going to keep going up for sure if we keep bombing all these targets in the country now.
I mean, how many times are we going to be lied to in this, right? Their weapons are decimated. Their nuclear facilities are decimated.
Right. Wasn't it like last summer we went in and bombed a nuclear facility, and apparently that like took care of it?
Also, like, oh, okay, so all of a sudden, what just killed the people in Jordan? Oh, a missile did. So I guess everything isn't decimated, missiles. Right? Like, they still have missiles, so it's not decimated. And then, it's like, and then people are saying, oh, well, Russia and China are helping them. Well, no fucking shit, they're helping them. Like, and they're probably doing it even more to spite America right now.
Well, I think that Russia's helping them because of for ideological reasons, but China's helping them for economic reasons, because China knows that it needs the oil that's going through the Strait of Hormuz. And China similarly is an authoritarian government that doesn't really care about, sort of human rights issues and things like that. And what they do care about is their economy, which is pumping, by the way. I don't know if you saw the recent news about AI, that China now has all these AI companies that are taking over the American companies and a lot of multinational corporations. So I just think that what is frustrating is twofold. One, there are American service members who are dying for a very unclear cause. And 2, that this war was never authorized by Congress. And now Trump is saying, because basically you get 60 days before Congress needs to like officially authorize the war. So an administration can decide to launch an attack on a country for 60 days and have it be that like military operation or whatever. Then it has to get confirmation from Congress. Trump is saying, oh, because there was the MOU, now we're restarting that 60 days. So we don't actually need authorization from Congress anymore, even though obviously it's been more than 60 days since the conflict has been going on. And
all right, wait. So can you repeat that? Because that's a very good point here.
So the 60 days part?
Yeah.
So an administration essentially gets 60 days to like launch a military operation without it technically being a war. And then at 60 days, Congress has to come in and authorize that as a war to then begin whatever full-scale kind of escalation of that looks like. Trump never got authorization from Congress. Republicans have largely, not stood up to him on that. Democrats have tried to, but they obviously don't have control of Congress right now. And what he's saying is that because the MOU was in place and there was a ceasefire for a period of time, that even though that MOU is over and the ceasefire has been broken by both sides, that he's trying to say, oh, now I get another new 60 days where I don't need authorization. And which is just bullshit because this obviously has been going on for a lot longer than 60 days. So it's like, we have a lot of Democrats in the House and in the Senate continuing to try to call for some sort of accountability on the part of the Trump administration. I think you may start to see some Republicans not necessarily speak out about that, but given the midterms are coming up and this war is very unpopular, and gas today just went above $4 again on average over the country, that you may have some Republicans who are starting to get kind of upset and potentially looking for a way to hold the administration accountable and actually get a vote to Congress, which probably wouldn't pass at this point. And then in that case, I don't know what happens. I guess we just leave Iran and we wash our hands of it and we're worse off than we were a few months ago.
I mean, what's going to happen when America backs out of Israel? Let's just say the midterms happen and no one's supporting Israel. Iran's going to, yeah.
Or what happens when there's pressure from a potentially Democratic president in 2028 to not support Israel in the way that it always has been because of the way the tides are turning.
And don't you so maybe that's a good time to change the tides to a different part of the world, Latin America.
Nice segue.
And, just going off of this, we have Venezuela, who suffered a 7.5, magnitude earthquake that now America's pumping tons of money in to help them rebuild. Amazing. I just love all the money we're spending on other countries right now, isn't it? Just like,
it's incredible.
When we're terrible in education,
healthcare,
our healthcare, our infrastructure sucks. Like, at least we have air conditioning, I guess.
Not all of us.
Not all.
Like not everybody,
That's true.
Come on now. That's not something that the government's helping out with for sure.
But I don't know if you saw the news today on Cuba. But the U.S. Department announced that Cuba has infiltrated the highest levels of the U.S. government while funding left-wing terrorism. Sick. I mean, is that line just not amazing? So my question to you, and this is a yes or no, Anna, because I don't want any comments. Do you think the U.S. will invade Cuba?
What do you mean by invade?
Or military operation into Cuba and save the Cuban people?
I can't answer that with just a yes or no.
Of course you can.
I think that America will intervene with the Cuban government. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And I was trying to ask a question like a senator or a congressman does, which I always hate.
Oh.
But
I'm in a hearing.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, yes or no, yes or no. I reclaim my time. But several of these issues have become central to the Trump administration and Latin American, policy, really, right? And the connection here with Iran is people are now talking that Iran is going to use Cuba for military cooperation to launch attacks on America, right? And I was like, wow. So basically, and this is all true. So, I mean, there's some of what the administration is saying is true. So the historical role of Cuba is played in supporting revolutionary movements across Latin America is pretty well documented. Like, many historians have talked about this. And the big question is, the State Department is saying whether Havana still has that same level of influence today, or whether the administration is just, viewing a very different Latin America through a Cold War lens. And maybe that's just the reason of allowing them to proceed this way. But, Marco Rubio is making Cuba the centerpiece of U.S. foreign policy right now.
Cuban American, very gung-ho on trying to get a new regime in Cuba.
And one notable quote from him was, the Cuban regime's sprawling intelligence and ideological network helped to build the far left in our country and our hemisphere. I think we're giving Cuba a bit more credit than they deserve. Am I right? Like,
I don't know. I think that In a way, yes, but also in a way, it's like if you think about where the country's located, if you think about its history, I do think that it is this like it's a small country, but it really is a linchpin to potentially like American success, not just in the region, but ideologically around the democratic world, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're using some of this historical references that I don't think the Cuban influence is as strong today. I mean, but like facts, it's Cuba, they trained leftist guerrilla movements during the Cold War, right? They exported revolutionary ideology throughout Latin America, right? They provided intelligence assistance to, our enemies, and they maintained close ties with, Venezuela, Nicaragua. They were always getting oil from, I think, Mexico, right? So, but to say that they have been, like coordinating left-wing governments, I mean, in the U.S. is far-fetched to me.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like sort of part of the like anti-commie talk of the Trump administration. And I think it should be taken with a grain of salt at this particular moment because we know since those victories of the Democratic Socialist candidates in New York and Colorado that a lot of this Republican, specifically from the Trump administration midterm messaging, is now about how the Democrats are becoming socialist, how the party is going too far left. And so I think what's interesting maybe about Cuba is there is, as you said, there is truth behind all of this, that obviously Cuba has historically had a communist government. It has not worked out so well for its people who are dying and living without power and without medicine and without food and without oil. But at the same time, you're kind of like, okay, but does that narrative of a communist Cuba help reinforce what the narrative that the Trump administration wants, which is that left-wing terrorists are running rampant in the United States and they are taking over the Democratic Party, so therefore you should not vote for Democrats?
Yeah, well, I mean, so the population of Cuba is about 11 million people.
That's
smaller
not
than
nothing.
smaller than LA.
Smaller than LA, but
which is a leftist hellhole place to live. So, but
tell me about it. Oh,
right?
God.
So it's not inconsequential, but I think it's so funny because the way I've always perceived America is being the big brother to the world. And this is why we have influence in so many countries. And I would always debate this with a lot of my very Republican friends and say, the reason we're spending money there is because if we're not there, our enemies will go in and spend money.
Right.
And they will pump up the economy. And then those people will end up going to that party, that government or regime. And this is why I've always been a proponent of America being out there and, putting money. And it's just so funny to see that.
Well, so then do you agree? Then do you agree with what the Obama's administration policy was of sort of like an open Cuba? And even though he allowed the communist government to stay in place, that because he lifted a lot of the embargoes and allowed the tourism economy to try to get back on its feet and stuff like that, do you think that that was beneficial for America's place in the world at the time as that big brother?
I mean, I went to Cuba during that time,
did.
by the way. And honestly, I felt so bad for the country. It is so poor. I mean, so dilapidated, the lights even there. It's, I mean, the food had no even like taste to it, really, in my opinion. Like,
interesting. I feel like Cuban food is so good.
I thought it was some of the worst food I've ever had. And I know that's probably a big thing to say, and I'll regret saying that. But
yeah, wow. Okay, we're gonna get some hate mail for that one.
Yeah, no, I will, but I think it to me, that is showing the best side of America. Is when that happened, so many people came to this country and go, wow, it really is beautiful. And I bet Havana was such a cool spot back in the day. But you drove around the town and all the houses look like they're literally crumbling.
Yeah.
Right. And all the people there were so happy with America. They were like, thank you. And people would ask, or do you feel safe? I was like, I've never felt safer in a country because all of them were like, we want you guys to be coming down here. We don't want like anyone to get kidnapped or robbed.
Right, right.
As soon as one person does, no one's coming to this country.
Well, I wonder if that's also, I mean, you have to imagine that there's a part of that for someone like Marco Rubio, whose parents were were Cuban exiles, you know, at the time because of politics, basically, that there must be a sense of internalized nostalgia if you're from a Cuban American family like that. It's why we see a lot of Cuban Americans on the right and leaning into more conservative, you know, especially economic policies, because obviously there were incredibly left, I guess you would say, policies in Cuba economically that destroyed the country. I think that just to go back to where we're at now, what I wonder is, like, we look at the stark difference between what happened in Venezuela, which was basically a singular military operation with a stated goal that was not totally successful, but seems like currently is a stable situation. You know, like the goal was get Maduro out, get a new government in place. They didn't get a new government in place. They got his deputy to now be the president, who just is cozied up to Trump so that America can have access to the bad oil they have in Venezuela. But that was like a one singular military operation, did not require any other sort of ground troops or military prowess, and definitely did not have the global economic effect of what has now happened in Iran in a very prolonged sense, where the goal was actually so far-fetched that we were going to just be able to convince Iran to have no nuclear weapons, that now, as mentioned, you know, 18 service members have died. The Strait of Hormuz is, for all intents and purposes, back under Iran's control, and they say they're not going to be allowing oil ships. So that is like if there's a spectrum between singular military operation that was semi-successful and prolonged military operation, aka unauthorized war, that has proven to be 100% unsuccessful, at least in my mind. I wonder, when you look at Cuba, the goal potentially being to replace that government, create some sort of stability, because I think in Marco Rubio's view, stability in Cuba can lead to American influence and stability in the region of Latin America. I wonder what that, to your question, like what that military operation will look like. If there is more diplomacy maybe happening with Cuba than all out military attack. I mean, I know like Raul Castro's son, who's he's not technically the president of Cuba, but is sort of like a figurehead there, that he's been in communication, I think, with the United States. So it's kind of like, I think it goes back to my cold open, which is like the whole reason, the big reason that Trump won was this idea of like, we're not going to be turning ourselves out to the world. We're going to be isolating, which I personally very much disagreed with. But now to see it happening in the complete opposite way that he campaigned on and the people voted for him, I don't understand how people who voted for him can comprehend that this is executing what he promised.
So I agree. And I think it's important for our followers to maybe on Cuba just understand a few of our Cuban Americans in Congress, right? Guess who our senators are there, other than Rubio, who's now set.
Wait, in Congress?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Mr. Ted Cruz.
Okay, what is his what is his actual name that's like actually a Latino name? That is it Roberto Cruz? No.
No,
it's Roberto Cruz.
his father's name was Raphael, but maybe
I think his name is Rafael Cruz. There's a whole thing that he's like not actually named Ted. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. There's so two people who are on our playlist that we talk about a lot are Nicole Malatakis, I guess has some Cuban heritage.
Yes.
And Maxwell Frost.
She's half Greek, half Cuban.
Yeah, okay. And Maxwell Frost.
Yes.
And Maxwell Frost has actually been, very vocal when this all started, a few months ago. And he was like one of like 30 lawmakers who signed a letter demanding the U.S. government abandon reported plans for military action there. Right. So like this is being discussed. And now with the State Department coming out with this statement today, like.
Do you think that the statement from the State Department is trying to galvanize support for a potential invasion of Cuba?
I mean, it's kind of funny because I'm like, is Trump going to send all of our military ships back to like Cuba, Venezuela area and just circle around the island until it, and let's face it, if like the Americans come in, it's going to be pretty quick. But
I guess what I wonder is like from the perspective of someone like Maxwell Frost, who has, ethnic ties to the region and is a very progressive Democrat, I would wonder what his objective would be. Is it like leave the country alone? Because that also doesn't seem to be going so well. It's like horrific conditions in the country right now.
Well, that's
but I guess it would be more
cut
in
off
line.
Their oil supply.
Right. So. I guess it would be more in line with the Obama strategy, which is like, let's not embargo all of these goods and services to Cuba just because we don't like their government. Let's not let their people suffer. Whereas the more hard line seems to be the suffering is the only thing that's going to change our ability to change the country.
Yeah. I mean, don't we have enough going on in the world right now?
Never.
Right? Just like
Well, I think just to like pull out a little bit before we end here, it's like these issues are not the issues that are going to swing voters in an election. But what I think is really important about issues like this, well, I should say the stuff with Iran is in a way, because the trickle-down effect of gas prices, of food prices, that will impact the way that people vote 100%. But pontificating on the Cuban government training left-wing terrorists in the United States is not going to make, Sally and Bill from Minnesota vote for Trump or vote for Trump's candidates or somebody else. But what is important, I think, to recognize is that I do think there's a sentiment within America now, even amongst people on the left, that we can't be putting all of this attention towards these other places and not as much attention towards the people in our own country. And it's hard because even as I'm saying that, the connection between how we deal with things abroad and how we deal with things at home will always exist. But what I think we all need to be looking for are politicians and leaders and people that we can look up to who can walk and chew gum at the same time. It's like, these are the hard things about being president, is what the fuck are you going to do about Cuba? But then the things that you have to message around when it comes to an election is what the fuck are you going to do about grocery prices? And I think a good president, Republican or Democrat, or a good member of Congress, or a good person operating at the federal level in our government needs to be able to answer both, knowing that both are equally important to our well-being, but the average person doesn't hold this, it doesn't weigh the same in their decisions on how they go about their lives. Because 75% of people in the United States are not thinking about foreign policy as it relates to Cuba.
Yeah.
But foreign policy as it relates to Cuba, I do kind of agree with Marco Rubio, could be very important for how America moves forward as a country in general.
Yeah. And I apologize for my Cuban food comment because I know
Yeah.
people really do love Cuban
I will
food,
say, if you're
so.
listening to this and you live in Los Angeles, the Cuban restaurant in LA, Versailles, there's a couple
I've
locations.
heard amazing.
It's
Yep.
very, very good.
Actually, one of my best friends is Cuban, and he's gonna kill me.
Well,
for
there you
saying
go.
that. Yeah.
I will also say when I'd like in Miami have gone to Little Havana and gone salsa dancing, and although it's very embarrassing to be a white girl in that situation, it's very cool. And so I do understand, like, there is, like you said, the nostalgia of what Cuba used to be, like, does live on in America through a lot of these immigrants. And I do understand how it's probably very sad to not have that connection to the country that you came from or the country that you knew. But I don't know that goading people by saying that there's like left-wing Cuban terrorist cells in the United States is necessarily the answer.
I had a lot of other things to worry about in the United States.
Yeah.
So,
well, on that note, cheers. And if you like what you hear, make sure that you're following or subscribing wherever you are listening to or watching this podcast. We post audio on all podcast platforms. We post video on YouTube if you like video. And please leave us a little review or some stars. We would appreciate 5. One would be really hurting our feelings, but, speak your truth. And we'll talk to you soon, everybody.
cheers.